Most discoveries are eventually explained. A little more evidence, a matching find somewhere else, and the mystery usually comes to an end. But not every discovery follows that path. Some have puzzled archaeologists from the very moment they were found, and despite their efforts and research, they still refuse to fit into any known explanation. These are the discoveries that have challenged experts for decades, and in some cases for centuries. The 15 archaeological discoveries you're about to see are still impossible for archaeologists to identify. But can you? Well, let's find out. Number 15. The Kakanmath Temple. According to local legend, this temple was finished in a single night. The Kakanmath Temple in India has puzzled visitors for years, not only because of its great architecture, but also because no one can say with certainty how its story truly began. Built during the 11th century and dedicated to Lord Shiva, its towering shikara once rose close to 100 feet before centuries of weather slowly reduced its height. We mean even today the remaining structure still displays extraordinary balance, detailed sculptures, and stone carvings that continue to impress architects and historians alike. Ancient folklore tells of celestial builders who worked through the night after Shiva appeared in a dream, but vanished before sunrise when a curious child looked outside against the king's orders. Visitors still point to unfinished carvings as proof that the work ended suddenly. But archaeologists believe construction lasted for years before something unexpectedly brought the project to an abrupt end. So, what was that something? Number 14. The tomb of Princess Donaj. This story is so strange that it's hard to know where history ends and legend begins. Hidden inside an old convent in Quilpam de Guerrero, there is a sealed tomb protected by a carved stone slab and a rope that keeps people at a respectful distance. Many believe it holds the remains of Princess Donaj, one of the best-known figures in Zapotec tradition. The story says she was offered to the Mixtecs after years of fighting, with the hope that her presence would bring peace between two rival peoples. That hope didn't last very long. Her father eventually tried to bring her home, but the rescue came too late. Donaj had already been executed, and according to the legend, her body was buried where nobody would ever find it. Years later, a shepherd noticed a beautiful flower growing from the ground, leading to the discovery of her remains. Well, whether every part of that story is true is impossible to know. But someone is buried there, it's true, and people continue making the journey to see the tomb for themselves. Number 13. The mysterious Palpa geoglyphs. The Nazca Desert in Peru is already famous for giant drawings spread across its dry landscape. But the best-known ones aren't the whole story. Nearby, across Palpa province, another collection of big figures has been quietly sitting in the hills for centuries without attracting much attention. Around 50 of them were identified with the help of drone surveys because many have faded so badly that they can barely be recognized from ground level. Time and weather have worn away much of their shape, making them easy to overlook unless viewed from above. Unlike the famous Nazca lines, these geoglyphs are generally linked to the older Paracas and Topar cultures and may have been created more than 2,500 years ago. Several take the form of unusual human figures that look very different from the designs associated with the Nazca people. Since so little survives from the Topar civilization, every newly recorded geoglyph adds another small piece to a much larger picture that historians are still trying to understand. Number 12. The Pyramid of the Dead Sea. Not every ancient building leaves behind a clear explanation for why it was built. Some seem determined to keep their purpose hidden, no matter how much evidence is discovered around them. One such structure rises from the Judean desert near the Dead Sea, where a massive pyramid-shaped monument has continued to puzzle archaeologists for years. Every stone was carefully cut by hand, and many weigh hundreds of pounds, making its construction an enormous undertaking. The problem is that no one knows why that effort was made. Some researchers believe it marked an important burial site, while others think it may have served as a monument, a watchtower, or even a stopping point along an ancient trade route. The desert's dry climate has preserved an impressive collection of objects inside the site, including papyrus fragments, wooden tools, baskets, ropes, bronze vessels, furniture, beads, weapons, fabric, coins, and ancient seeds. Those discoveries reveal plenty about the people who passed through here, while the structure itself continues refusing to reveal its original purpose. Number 11. The Phoenician figurines of Byblos. At first sight, these little metal figures don't seem important. They're small, plain, and almost identical to one another. But archaeologists have recovered somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 of them from ancient temple sites across Lebanon, with the greatest numbers coming from the old Phoenician city of Byblos. Others have appeared at Kamid el-Lawz, suggesting they were part of a tradition shared across more than one community. Cast from bronze, silver, and copper alloys, the figurines are now over 3,000 years old. Most were buried around temples rather than inside homes, leading many to believe they were left behind as offerings by ordinary worshippers. Some historians even think they were produced in large numbers and sold to visitors arriving at the temples, making them one of history's earliest religious souvenirs. Not every figure looks the same. Some are completely nude, while others wear short kilts, hinting that ideas about clothing and modesty changed over time. Small as they are, these figures preserve a glimpse of everyday faith that written history rarely captures. Number 10. Badrul Hau monoliths. Have you ever noticed how so many ancient civilizations poured unbelievable amounts of time and effort into building things that no one can fully explain today? The Badrul Hau monoliths on Palau's largest island are a perfect example. Spread across a hillside on Babel Daub stand 52 massive basalt pillars arranged in 2 long rows, almost as though someone planned every stone with careful precision. A few even carry simple human faces carved into them, adding another layer to the mystery. Tests suggest the site was built around AD 161, yet no one has been able to say with confidence why it was created. One popular idea links the pillars to Abai, the traditional meeting house used throughout Palau. If that's true, the building they once supported would have been unlike anything else on the islands. The carved faces, however, don't fit that explanation very well. Some think they were added centuries later, while others believe they belong to an older tradition that quietly disappeared. The stones have stayed where they are, but the people who understood them are long gone. What's your theory about them? Number 9. The perplexing ancient woman's skull. Well, 2022 brought plenty of archaeological discoveries, but one of the most interesting came from a cave in Taiwan. There, researchers examined the skull of a woman who had lived about 6,000 years ago, and the results didn't fit the history many people thought they already knew. She was small in stature, had dark skin, and carried genetic markers connected with ancient populations that include the Negrito groups of the Philippines. Those findings became even more interesting because indigenous traditions in Taiwan have long spoken of short, dark-skinned people who lived in the mountains before the ancestors of today's tribes arrived. For a long time, those stories had no physical evidence supporting them. This discovery changed that. The woman appears to have belonged to a population that lived on the island more than 1,000 years before the earliest established tribes. Where her people came from, how they lived, and why they disappeared are questions that still don't have answers. Number 8. The teen girl of Liang Paning's cave. We know how the story of human history is supposed to go. New discoveries usually fill in the missing pieces, making the picture a little clearer than before, but sometimes one turns up that does the complete opposite. That's what happened in 2021 inside Liang Paning's cave on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. Buried there were the 7,000-year-old remains of a teen hunter-gatherer belonging to the mysterious Toalian culture. At first, it looked like another important archaeological discovery. Then her DNA was studied. Instead of matching any known ancient population, it revealed a genetic profile unlike anything researchers had seen before. She also carried Denisovan ancestry, connecting her to an ancient human group known mostly from fossils discovered thousands of miles away in Siberia. That single result raised a much bigger possibility that Denisovans may have reached parts of Southeast Asia long before anyone suspected. Until this discovery, the Toalian people were known through their distinctive Meros stone points. Now, one young girl has changed the conversation about who once lived there. Number 7. The Salzmende ritual pits a deep hole in the ground doesn't usually attract much attention. More often than not, it ends up being dismissed as an old storage pit, or little more than ancient rubbish. That assumption completely changed after archaeologists investigated a series of large pits in Germany dating back roughly 5,000 years. 12 pits, each measuring around 6.5 feet wide, 10 feet long, and reaching nearly 8 feet deep, gradually revealed a far more unusual story. Instead of everyday waste, they contained carefully prepared human skulls, complete dog skeletons, fragments of burned buildings, and selected pottery placed with obvious purpose. The discoveries pointed toward repeated ceremonies carried out by the Salzmende culture between 3400 and 3000 BC. Dogs appear to have held a special place within those beliefs, possibly serving as spiritual companions for the dead, rather than simple burial sites. These pits offer a rare glimpse into rituals that vanished thousands of years ago without any explanation. Number 6. Likernik. As of now, the world's most powerful telescopes can peer billions of light years into space, revealing galaxies that formed near the beginning of the universe. Thousands of years ago, people had nothing more than their own eyes. Yet some still manage to follow the movements of the sky with surprising accuracy. One place that hints at just how closely they watch the heavens is Likernik in Peru. Across the site, broad stone surfaces carry carved patterns that many believe were used to follow the changing positions of celestial bodies. Those markings may have helped people decide when to plant crops, prepare for seasonal changes, or predict the arrival of rain. No one can say who first carved them. Some features point toward later Andean cultures, while others seem far older, suggesting different generations may have returned to the same place again and again, adding their own knowledge to what was already there. All that remains today is a silent record of people who spent centuries watching the sky. Number 5. The Disk of Sabu. The Sabu disk has spent decades fooling people's eyes. From certain angles, it resembles a propeller. From others, it looks like a precision-engineered machine part. The only thing it doesn't resemble is a 5,000-year-old Egyptian artifact. But that is what it is believed to be. It was discovered in 1936 inside the tomb of Sabu beneath the Saqqara necropolis. This object was found alongside copper tools, pottery vessels, flint implements, and other grave goods that survived despite the tomb having been looted centuries earlier. Carved from fragile metamorphic stone, it measures about 24 inches across and features 3 incredibly thin, curved lobes extending from a hollow center. Producing such delicate shapes without breaking the stone would have demanded exceptional craftsmanship. Archaeologists believe it may have been created for ceremonial purposes rather than everyday use, perhaps holding offerings during special rituals. Even after decades of research, however, nobody has been able to explain why Egyptian craftsmen chose such a weird design or what purpose it truly served. Number 4. The copper crown of Uttar Pradesh. Crowns are usually made to be noticed. They're built from precious metals, covered with jewels, and meant to show everyone exactly who holds power. That's one reason this discovery caught so many people by surprise. In January 2021, archaeologists excavating the village of Chandaon in India's Uttar Pradesh uncovered a crown that had rested underground for roughly 4,000 years. It wasn't made of gold or silver. It was crafted from copper and was still resting on the skull of the person who had worn it in life. The burial is linked to the Indus Valley civilization, making it one of the rarest finds ever recovered from that culture. Only one other crown from the same period is known, and that example was made from silver. This one was decorated with carnelian and faience, materials valued for their beauty and rarity, leaving little doubt that its owner held an important place in society. Their name has disappeared forever, but the crown quietly tells us that whoever they were someone people remembered. Number 3. Dinosaur teeth of China. A single tooth can tell an incredible amount about an animal that disappeared millions of years ago. Give paleontologists a dozen of them, and an entire prehistoric landscape can begin to change. That is exactly what happened after 12 dinosaur teeth were recovered from China's Songliu Basin. Although they may not look especially impressive on their own, each one carried clues about the animals that once lived there. Careful examination linked the fossils to several dinosaur groups, including tyrannosaurids, dromaeosaurines, velociraptorines, hadrosaurids, and titanosaurs. Until this discovery, scientists believed several of those species occupied different regions during the late Cretaceous. These fossils suggest their range was much broader than previously thought, offering fresh insight into migration, changing climates, and the environments they once shared. Teeth alone cannot identify every species with complete certainty, but they preserve enough detail to place them within particular families. Number 2. The electromagnetic coil stone of Kosovo. A walk through the mountains rarely ends with a discovery that leaves people arguing for years afterward, yet that's exactly what happened to photographer Ismet Smiley in Kosovo during 2017. Resting among the rocks was a carved stone unlike anything he expected to find. Embedded inside it appeared to be tightly wound copper coils, arranged with a level of precision that immediately looked intentional rather than natural. The object also carried shallow grooves and 4 small circular markings carved into one side, details that only added to the mystery. After showing it to local specialists, Smiley was told the stone could be more than 20,000 years old. If that estimate were ever confirmed, it would place the object far outside the accepted history of this kind of technology. Since then, however, the story has barely moved forward. Smiley has declined further testing because he fears the artifact could disappear into someone else's hands. Without independent examination, this discovery is still a big mystery. Number 1. Lepidodendron scale tree fossil well. Finding something that has been buried for millions of years is rarely as simple as picking up a rock. Most of the time, archaeologists and paleontologists spend weeks, months, or years digging through layers of earth before they find anything worth talking about. But sometimes, nature decides to do the digging instead. In a creek near Birmingham, flowing water exposed a strange pattern locked inside solid rock. Although the fossil has not yet been officially examined, many believe it is the imprint of a lepidodendron, an enormous plant that dominated Earth's forests around 300 million years ago. Despite its big size, reaching nearly 100 feet tall with trunks several feet across, it was not truly a tree. As it grew, older leaves fell away, leaving rows of diamond-shaped scars across the trunk. Those scars fossilized, surviving long after the plant disappeared. Since lepidodendrons lived before Pangea split apart, similar fossils have been found on several different continents. We really hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe. Until then, stay curious, and we'll see you soon.